welcome to another episode of The People We Meet. I'm Ty Bruner, and I'll be your host. Today, I'm here with friend Bill Burke, who I met at Costco. We got to talking, and he was kind enough to invite me to come visit in his home and talk a little bit about his 3 tours in Vietnam, 2 of those in the Special Forces, and one of those as a Medevac pilot in the Army. He has a very interesting perspective, lots of amazing adventures, a very colorful past and a childhood. And I appreciate you being here with me today, Bill.
Thank you.
So I'd like to start right at the very beginning. You had a pretty colorful childhood.
A real one. A real colorful.
So you were born, where were you born?
Spokane, Washington.
So you were born and raised in Washington, in Spokane, Washington.
Yes.
And you kind of bounced around all over the place.
All over.
So tell me a little bit about your early family life.
Well, my family life is I was with my real parents up till the 5th grade, 6th grade. And then I was taken away from them with the rest of my siblings, my three brothers and 3 sisters. There were 7 of us. I was then put in a children's home.
And that's because your mom had some issues?
She had some real bad issues.
What were they?
One was alcoholic.
She was an alcoholic. And then you said your dad was a railroad man?
My dad was a railroad man. He worked railroad. He's gone out of town. He was a brakeman for the SP&S, and he was never home. And my real mother, shied up to some Air Force guy. And she was sleeping with him and everything right in front of the kids and that, and I didn't care for it, so I was gone.
Okay. So they split up, and then it sounds like the kids kind of got divvied up. And where did you end up?
I ended up at St. Joseph's Children's Home in Spokane, and I was there until I graduated from 8th grade.
And how was that what was it like there?
Children's home we had both boys and girls. Girls was on one side of the big building. Boys were on the other. Nuns were there to take care of us. And so it wasn't that bad, but it was enjoyable. But yet, when we went to school, the school was about 10 blocks from us. You had a certain path you had to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't deviate. And people would call up and say, your kids walked across our lawn, and then you get chewed out when we got back.
Mm-hmm.
Well, kind of irritated me, but I was brought up when I was at home. Then I went there. I was adventurous. I ran away 4 times.
Well, it sounds like you weren't more than adventurous. It sounded like you weren't very content either.
No, I wasn't. I don't know what I was looking for. That's the big problem.
Well, I guess I could probably guess, but so you were there until 8th grade.
8th grade, you had to leave.
Okay, and then where'd you go after that?
After that, I was figured about 11,
mm-hmm.
12. I was put on a dairy farm with 2 people. They were over 60 years of age.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing to do with a 11-year-old kid. They weren't, you need that parent teaching.
Right.
But a 60-some-year-old person doesn't relate to you that way.
Right. And it sounds to me like you were there pretty much as just a hand to work.
Yes, I was. My dad had to pay money to Catholic Charities for me being there,
mm-hmm.
and they used the money on them, and I never got an allowance or no pay or anything. Everything I did on the dairy farm.
It sounded like your pants got to not fit very well either, because
I had high water pants. Above the ankle. And you go to school, people laugh.
Of course they do.
And that's embarrassing as hell.
Because kids are mean, aren't they?
Oh, God. But you can't let it bother you. You got to overlook it.
That's right.
Yeah. And that's what I did.
So how long were you on the dairy farm?
About 4 months.
And then what happened?
Then I got tired and I took off running away from them.
And then where'd you go?
I was in, cops picked me up, take me back. Finally, Catholic Charities, the caseworker came out and he said, "You're going to have to stop this." And I says, "I'll stop right now as I'm talking to you. Once you leave, I'm gone again." "Okay, get in the car and I'll take you to another foster home."
Okay.
They were younger people. And we went there, and the first thing they said, "We're going to a ball game. You want to go?"
You're like, what?
Yeah.
And this is where you met Anita.
Anita and Cal. Really neat people.
Mm-hmm.
So I was with them, and I met her dad. Her dad, yeah. And I joined the Navy. He was a captain in the Navy.
Now, real quick, at what point did they try to adopt you?
They tried to adopt me when I was in junior
in high school,
right?
And
they had to get permission from my mother, and my mother told them, "Pay me $2,000 and I'll sign the paper."
And that didn't fly, did it?
Nita said, "No way." And she says, "What we will do, Bill, is we'll wait till you're 17, then you sign your own adoption papers."
Gotcha.
But I turned around and I says, really, there's no sense. You're my mother. So this league, go there. And that's what happened. So I was there until high school.
Okay.
I finished high school.
And then you said Cal was a captain in the Navy?
No, her dad.
Her dad was.
Her dad was a captain in the Navy Reserve. And he wanted me to join the Navy Reserve. I said, "Hey, this might be something new." And so I did. And I tell you one thing, what it did for me, it turned the light on in my head. And this ain't bad.
And what do you mean? What do you mean it turned the light on in your head?
Turned my light on. It was somewhat adventurous when you go in the military. But the big thing about it is you learn that when you're told to do something, you do it. But you don't think animosity to the person that told you to do it. So obey an order.
I got a question for you then. You liked that structure. It sounded like they gave you an order. It was something worth doing. You took care of business.
Right.
Now, even though you'd been bounced around to your home life was kind of rough. The dairy farm didn't work out, and then things went well with Anita and Cal. But it sounds to me like you kind of lacked that structure in your life prior to that. Is that?
That was the big thing.
So that was kind of right up your alley, but you didn't know it until then.
Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't even realize it then.
Gotcha. So you took to that.
Yeah.
Okay. So
you gotta sit there and think, and that's what I did. I sat down and thought, this is the way to go. You learn, and when you give an order, you do it. Don't question.
Yeah.
And move on in that. Because eventually roles are going to be reversed and you're going to be in that status.
Yeah.
And
you can't learn to be a good leader until you learn to be a good follower. Huh?
Right. You got to learn that first.
So you were trained to be, you were a corpsman, right?
Yeah, McCorman. And the one thing you learn, what I really enjoyed as a corpsman is the doctors will let you do things because you had to learn. Because eventually, as a corpsman, you could be put into the Marines. Then you got to treat the Marines.
That's right.
And they learned to trust the doc. They called them docs.
Absolutely.
And they trusted him. And so that's where you learn. To me, was this started to really fixed on me, but I never did get to join the Marine Corps.
Right.
And I did my 2 years in the Navy. And then my foster mother was a nurse. And she said, "Why don't you go and become a nurse?" Well, back then, at that time, a guy going into nursing was, wait a minute, what's wrong with him? But, you can't let people ask me, "He's going to be a nurse?" I said, "What's wrong with it?" Tell me right now.
Because back then it was typically a female occupation.
Yeah. And so I said, "Hey, how about a female becoming a doctor. When all you see is men doctors.
Mm-hmm.
You don't hardly see a female doctor.
Yeah.
But they're just as good as the men.
Yeah.
And men are good in the nursing field in psychiatric nursing.
Is that right?
Yeah, very.
Yeah.
And also in industrial nursing, where they go into the big plants and they're nurse to cover the guys in the plant and that.
And when I sound surprised, is I certainly know that they all have the capacity to be good, but that was your perception back then too,
right?
Yeah, which is kind of unusual.
Mm-hmm. It was unusual.
So
no,
go ahead.
But I had to listen to my foster mother.
Mm-hmm.
She was a very good nurse, and she says, "Try it, and if you don't like it, quit."
Okay.
But you don't know, and you don't cross a bridge until you get to it. And if you like it, you go through. But if something comes up, you can turn back and go away. So I did that. I applied and got it accepted. Then I had to go to Alexian Brothers School in Chicago, complete male hospital,
mm-hmm.
and also no females in the student or in the hospital.
And how did that go?
It went good.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It didn't feel like that was my goal in life.
I got you.
I didn't know. And then I had to do a report for English because we had a English professor teaching us English from DePaul. And my report was the good and the bad of an atomic bomb.
What were your thoughts on that?
That I remembered Hiroshima.
Mm-hmm.
And that what it destroyed, how many people it killed, and it ended the war with Japan. But people say, was it worth it? How many American lives did we save? That's what I look at.
Right.
I was American, and that's what I look at. They started it, we finished it. But doing the report, then I was reading books, and then I've read books on the Army Green Beret or Special Forces and what they did and how they did it. And I said, holy cow, that's me. I didn't have. So I finally quit the nursing school.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't me.
How did Anita take that?
She said, what are you going to do? And I says, I'm going in the Army. I'm going to jump school and that. I'm going to join Special Forces, Green Beret. And she says, you know what that means? And I says, yeah, I'm going to have to go to war someplace. But that's the chances you take.
So you came back to Spokane.
Yes.
Right? And then that's where you met.
Now, I came back to Spokane, and then I met a girl at the dentist office I went to grade school with.
Uh-huh. And you recognized her right away, right?
I recognized her, but she didn't recognize me.
And what were you doing in the dentist office that day anyway?
I had a bad toothache. And so he had to kind of dig it out and that, and he sewed it up. And she made an appointment to get the stitches out. I took them out myself. She called, you missed your appointment. I said, I already took the. You're not supposed to do that. We do it. I said, well, that happens.
So at what point, so did you ask her out?
Yeah, I did ask her out. And
but this was after you had your tooth pulled and you took your stitches out.
And and she says, well, I don't know. And I said, hey, if you don't want it, fine. She said, no, I'll go out with you. And so I was home doing some stuff and that. And my foster mother had got upset because Grandma was yelling at me to do more work on their little.
Mm-hmm.
And so I walked out of the house, got in the car, and drove downtown. Went to the Army recruiter, and I says, "Get me out of town today, and I'll join." And he did.
So you joined up?
Joined the Army.
And you had a date that night, didn't you?
I didn't tell her. Oh God. But I went in the Army and went to Fort Ord, California. And then they sent me down to Fort Sam. Because they looked at my Navy record, and I was a hospital corpsman.
Mm-hmm.
So I went down to Fort Sam, and I says, I don't want this. What do you want? I want to go to Special Forces. Well, you got to go to jump school. I says, where is it? Fort Benning, Georgia. Then, if you sign up for Special Forces, they cannot stop you. They have to run you through.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to jump school at Fort Benning, Georgia. After I finished jump school, then I went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And I went through Special Forces training there.
How was that?
That was outstanding.
How so?
Well, when you got there, you learned classes. You got classes you had to go through. And then you learn counterinsurgency.
Mm-hmm.
And people ask, well, what does Special Forces do that Navy SEALs or Marine Recon or that? Special Forces train nations or armies of the other third world countries how to fight a guerrilla warfare.
Mm-hmm.
SEALs, they go in and blow things up, or they go on in and do assassination.
Mm-hmm.
Recon, they go in and do damn near the same thing, but they're picked out to hit a village or that. So it's what in your mind what you want to do.
And this is what you wanted to do.
This is what I wanted to do.
And how'd you get along with your buddies in there and that were training along with you? Are you guys pretty tight?
Well, in Special Forces, you're in a 12-man team.
So you almost don't have any choice but to get pretty tight.
Well, when you're in a 12-man team, that team can split down to 6 guys,
Mm-hmm.
6 people. So you look at the 12-man team, you got 6 individuals equal to the other 6 individuals as far as MOS and what they can do. And so then you go to another camp or something, and you've got to watch your buddies back. If you and a guy can't get along, one of you have to leave. And that is up to either the team leader or the team sergeant.
Gotcha.
And he looks at who's the best. Who do I want? Can we get another guy in? And usually you can real fast.
You feel like you fit in pretty well?
Oh, we were a tight group.
And that's where you wanted to be, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And you go out on patrol, you're with your 2 buddies, and also you got bodyguards. And they're there to protect you in that. And we can cover some things that we did later on in this, but just to let you know, when you go in a group like that, you've got to be able to get along with people.
Absolutely. So where are you in your training at this point?
The training is, I was, damn near through.
Mm-hmm.
I had to go to, and people say, you're kidding me. We called it dog lab because I was going to be the senior medic on the team. So you go to dog lab and you get a patient. It's a dog. And that dog better not come down with a cold. And so you treat the dog, and then halfway through or almost before you finish dog lab, you put the dog, you're not under, but you put it to sleep for a while, and you put a bullet through its hind leg. Then you go in and debride the wound and everything and clean it. And then you treat it. And you better hope like hell the dog doesn't get infected. Because if it does, you're out.
Is that right?
And then after it's all done in that, you end up, take the dog in, you do a guillotine amputation.
I don't know if that part's going to go in the show, Bill.
Huh?
I don't know if that part's going to make it in the show.
It doesn't have to, but we had to.
Yeah.
We had to learn how to do it. If we had to do it in the field, we had to do it. And then after that's done, you put the dog asleep forever. And that.
Wow, that's tough.
It is tough. But the thing is, it makes you grow up and think. And there's things that I learned. There's things that I thought I would never do, but I did. But you have to look at the end result. Why? And that's what.
Taking care of your guys.
Yeah.
So then what happened?
Well, then I finished that. Then I had some time, and so Christmas was coming. So I came home and married Roxanne. I turned around and took her back to Fort Bragg.
Mm-hmm.
Got to Fort Bragg and that and finished, graduated from Dog Lab, got my orders, I got my beret, and then I was going to the 1st Special Forces in Okinawa.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to pack up Roxanne and take her home. Got her home, put her in home, and I went down to San Francisco and then flew to Okinawa. I got to Okinawa, was put on an A-team. A-team is 12 men. So you train and everything with these 12 men. You learn each other and everything.
This is a whole bunch of, these are all brand new guys.
Or guys that are already there, and you could be 2 or 3 new ones into the 12 team.
Mm-hmm.
And you learn each other. You sleep in the barracks, you're all in one area. And you lay everything out exactly like the 12 men. And then you go check them, and they check you, and everything's got to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
And that. And then we were there training and that, road marches and everything. And then the team got sent to Nam for 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
attached to the 5th Special Forces. Then we were put in a camp that was already built and everything. That team left, and we took over the camp. And then 6 months later, another team comes in, we go home.
So what'd you do during the 6 months?
You take what I did in the 6 months was the first thing, I checked all the indigenous troops out, make sure they were healthy and that. One thing about Nam is they had enemies in our troops.
Mm.
You didn't know who they were.
So who were you working with directly?
The Vietnamese.
Not the ARVN?
RVN.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the RVN, the strike force, they called it.
Okay.
And you worked with them, and then you have a rifle range, you show them how to fire, and then you take them out on patrols.
Mm-hmm.
And you also have 3 bodyguards. So when you stop at night, the bodyguards come and get you and hide you.
Now, who are the bodyguards?
Chinese Nungs, mountain yards.
Oh.
And they don't tell the RVN and where you're at. In the morning, you show up. But if you're hit during that night, those bodyguards got you covered.
I'd never heard of that.
Yeah, they did that. And then at night when you're in your camp and you're patrolling around the camp, that bodyguard's laying out there somewhere. You never know where he's at. And he's watching the perimeter of where the RVN are at.
Mm-hmm.
If one of them approaches a fence, he shoots them.
How did you like working with the RVN?
As long as we controlled the money and the food, they loved us. And we control them that way. We control the money, their pay, and we control the food.
So they're so not only you training them, but you kind of own them during that.
Yeah, you own them. And I wouldn't say own. They're not a slave or anything.
Right, but I mean, you've got the purse strings.
Yeah, you got the purse strings. And if they want their money, and the guy says, I ain't going, and we say, there's the gate. Don't let it hit you in the butt on the way out.
Gotcha.
Out of here.
So you did that for 6 months?
Yeah.
And then you rotated back home?
I went back to Okinawa.
Mm-hmm.
Then they going back down again. And did that for 6 months and went back.
So second tour?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I turned around and I went down. On the second tour, I met a pilot, chopper pilot.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, how do you like walking out there in that jungle and all that crap? I said, I'm getting tired. I'm getting old. He said, you ain't old.
How old were you?
But he says, go to flight school.
How old were you at that point?
23, 24.
Old. You're getting a little long in the tooth, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. So I said, okay. So I put in for it, never, and in Okinawa, when you put in for it, You fill all the paperwork out, and then you have to go down to the airfield where they got an Army chopper.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy takes you up and see if you are scared of flying. If I'm not scared of jumping out of an airplane, flying in a helicopter ain't going to scare me. I jumped them. So I said, okay. So I did that. I had 90 days leave on the books. I came home. And I got with Roxanne. And I said, well, we're going. I got 90 days leave. So we spent 30 days here in town. Then I was getting bored because after all the things I was doing,
you're kind of in the groove at that point.
I'm in a groove, baby. I'm moving.
Yeah.
So
how did Roxanne take that?
I don't know. She was somewhat quiet. She never mentioned it. She never. So I turned around. I said, okay, we're going back. So we got back to Fort Bragg. We drove back. Got to Fort Bragg and got on base housing, got in, moved in and that. And then I said, well, I better go check in. I went to personnel. I says, here I am. And he says, where in the heck have you been? I said, why? You're going to flight school. We've been waiting. I says, oh, well, I guess I better go home and tell the wife.
Yeah.
So I went home and I says, I'm going to leave in 3 days. I'm heading for Fort Walters, Texas. No wives are allowed. So you got to move in off the base and move into a hotel and I'll be at Fort Walters outside of Fort Worth, because no wives were allowed. So I got down there and I found out wives were allowed. So I called her up and she put everything in storage, packed the car up, and drove from there to Fort Walters. Now, there's not many wives would do that, but she did.
That's a good honor.
Oh, yeah. And that. So I finished flight school at Walters was primary. Then you have to go to Fort Rucker to learn to fly the Huey and that.
Right.
So did that.
What'd you think of the old Huey anyway? How'd you like flight school and how'd you like the Huey?
Flight school I loved.
You started fixed wing, right?
Huh?
Did you start fixed wing or was it helicopter?
Choppers only.
Okay.
So flight school I loved. And in the school they teach you one thing that a lot of people don't learn out in civilian life, and that everybody is equal and you watch each person's back and that. And when you're flying, you've got to be able to trust the guy in the other seat and the two people in the back, your crewman and your medic. And that's what you learn. You're one unit, and that aircraft doesn't fly itself. You got to fly it. And that's what I learned in flight school. And slowly the light in my brain, like you had asked before, was getting brighter. And I said, okay, so we finished flight school, came home and told the wife, taking you home again. Where are you going? Vietnam. So back to Vietnam, I was assigned to the 498 Medevac. And I said, damn it, I wanted a gunship. Not with my background. No, you're going.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So I said, fine. That's what I'm supposed to do. I did it for 2 months, and then the light shone bright as the sun. This is my job, saving them guys, going in and pulling them out.
And how many of them did you pull out?
1,820.
1,820 guys.
And you go into a hot LZ, you're being shot at and that, but you don't think anything. Your mind and everything is on that guy on the ground that's suffering.
Now, they did a little statistical analysis, and the life expectancy of a chopper crew in combat was not more than a couple of minutes.
That's right.
Yeah. It sounds to me like, did any of that compute with you, or were you just, what was your mindset?
Oh, my mindset was when I went in, when I got there and my first third day there, I was going with this other pilot's been there. And he says, we're going into probably a hot LZ. I says, let's go. He says, we can be shot at. And I said, looked at him and I says, I have been. He said, what do you mean? I says, I was a Green Beret here too. Oh, you were shot at. I said, yeah. So let's get these guys. We went in, and to tell you the truth, we heard about the statistics.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought of it.
Did you think you were gonna? Did you consider? I might not make it through this.
No.
Just took care of business.
I always looked at it this way. If it's my time to go, I'm going to go.
Check.
And that's the way I had to look at it. And if you go in there with doubts, you can get yourself killed.
Yeah.
So you don't think about it. You just go in and say, them little guys can't hit me. I was wrong, but what the hell?
Well, it sounded like you were wrong. What, 3 times?
3 times.
Tell me about that.
Okay, most of us all 3 times on horse missions.
You got shot down 3 times.
So you go into the jungle and you got to lower into the trees.
Mm-hmm.
On the front and on the sides of your chopper, you got big white crosses. And we always said that's the bullseye for Charlie. Well, you're just hovering there in the trees, and he's down there in the ground, and he starts peppering. He doesn't have very high to lift the rifle to hit the engines.
Yeah.
Or the tranny. If he hits the tranny, you just hold what you got and go down into the trees and hope your American guys are down there helping you.
Yeah.
And they're there. Once you hit the ground they're in that aircraft yanking your butts off. They're protecting you. And that mostly happened on all 3 flights. Got my aircraft shot.
So you didn't get hurt. Did any of your guys get hurt?
Nope.
Really?
Because when we're going down, I say get on the floor and lay down. Don't raise up. Don't try to shoot anything. You stand up, you're dead. And as a pilot, you got you call it chicken plate.
It
fits over your chest.
Yeah.
So if they're shooting through the cockpit into the cockpit from the front, it'll hit the chicken plate.
Mm-hmm.
And you got an armor slide that comes on your left side. And they said they gave us ballistic helmets. The only thing I saw used one time was it went in, went around the guy's head and dropped out. Other guys were shot in the head and didn't make it.
Yeah. How did you get back out again? Once you got shot down, who came got you?
They took us back to their little air control area.
I got you.
And S4 sent a ship out and took us out.
Gotcha.
That's why you got out.
Now, you ended up with 22 air medals.
Yeah.
And then a Bronze Star.
Bronze Star. The Bronze Star I got when I had to go in and pull out one of our ships that was shot down.
Mm-hmm.
Get the crew out.
So you physically left the aircraft to go?
I left the aircraft because the Charlie came running up to the door.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't swing my rifle around, so I just opened the door, jumped out, and jumped on him and choked him.
What was that?
Huh?
Go ahead.
And people say, you literally choked him to death? I says, yeah. Why? Because he's trying to kill me.
It doesn't seem like it would be a difficult question. Like, why did you do it?
Well,
he wasn't.
The thing is, I don't see it as a difficult question. It's the same thing as you run into an enemy and you're going to shoot.
Mm-hmm.
If you pause 3 seconds, you're dead.
Yeah.
You run into them, you shoot. That's the way you do it in a war.
So you strangled the one guy.
Yeah.
He ran up to your aircraft.
He ran it to the aircraft to my side.
Okay.
I flung the door open and I leaped right out on top of it.
Mm-hmm. And then you had to leave your aircraft to go to the other one where the other guys were?
Yeah. Pull out the crew chief was wounded in the leg.
Mm-hmm.
Had to drag him back. And then the crew chief and medic on Mike went in.
Mm-hmm.
Both pilots got out without getting shot.
Mm-hmm.
But their aircraft was smoking and that, so we take a thermite grenade and throw it in on top of the radios to melt them down to nothing.
Gotcha. So you said for every air medal you had to fly 25 hours. Is that correct?
You got 25 hours.
25 hours, and it couldn't have been it wasn't flying the pattern. It wasn't dropping off.
It wasn't a milk run or anything. It had to be in the combat zone.
So what's 22 times 25 here is let's see do some quick math on that. Comes up to 550 combat hours.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite a few. And you were only supposed to survive a couple minutes.
Well, when you say a couple minutes, the one thing they don't put into it is most chopper pilots go over there, and we used it as longer than a couple minutes. They're either killed on the first 30 days or the last 30 days.
Right.
First 30 days, they don't know what the hell they're doing. Last 30 days, too complacent. In the 498 that I was in, the last 30 days, you don't fly. You don't go nowhere.
Really?
So we set up in our bunk areas there and just got drunk. We drank Black Russians and Matus wine. And I cannot, to this day, stand Matus wine.
Did you?
But that's the way we ruled it.
So during all this time, were you writing to Roxanne?
Yeah.
You guys are letters flying back and forth?
Well, yeah. And if I'm out in the field, I didn't write then because we're out there 2.5 weeks.
Yeah, you're busy.
And she'd try to let it, where in the hell's my mail? Honey, I'm out in the field.
So how's the relationship going with all this going on? I mean, that's a lot. It's a lot. But I tell you what, I wouldn't trade her for anything. Absolutely. Sounds like a keeper. Tell you what, how about let's ask her.
Okay.
Let's take a real quick.
But just to let you know, December 28th, we'll be married 61 years.
61. That's saying something. And you say all these nice things about her.
Oh, yes.
Tell you what, let's take a real quick break. Let's go get Roxanne and we'll come back.
Okay.
All right, hang on. Okay, we are back with Roxanne. Roxanne and Bill have been together for, it's going to be 61
years.
61 years. Roxanne, you've been putting up this guy for 61 years.
I know. I know.
So I'm glad you're here, and I really appreciate you being willing to sit down with us because, I mean, Bill's got some pretty amazing stories about his adventures over there in Vietnam, but I'm actually very interested to know what all this was like for you as his wife back home. You moved all over the country, on base, off base, away from your family, and then he's being shipped off to Vietnam. What was that like for you?
Well, naturally, I didn't like it. We were only married 4 months, and he got shipped out. And so I went back home, and I guess, you just pray a lot. You just don't know what's going on. And anyway, he came back home after, it was 18 months, I believe, the first time. And then he was just home for a short while and a few months, and then he shipped back overseas for another year. And in the meantime, I was pregnant with our first child, so that kept me busy. And
A little bit of a distraction.
A bit of a distraction, yes. And I had my family that were very supportive, so it wasn't bad. I know a lot of people. I guess we grew up during tough times when we could put up with a lot.
Now, your first daughter was born. Which tour was he on when she was born? First tour.
Jennifer.
No. I can't remember.
It's okay.
I can't remember. She was born 3.5 years after we were married, so it had to have been the second tour.
Okay. And then how was the communication? Because, I mean, it sounds like, he was in the field quite a bit.
Well, it wasn't like today, because you didn't have cell phones and all that. So it just depended on letters.
Right. Handwritten letters.
Handwritten letters, and he wasn't too good at writing.
Was that okay?
Well, so I would quit writing for a while and a little bit, and then I got an answer right away.
As soon as you knew you were in the hot seat.
But it all worked out. Yeah.
You said you were fearful quite a bit of the time.
Well, I worried about him a lot.
Yeah.
But like I said, you say a lot of prayers and you have to trust in God. That's pretty much it.
Well, I appreciate you sharing. And I You know what? I think I might have another couple questions for you as we go along, if that's okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I can't think of anything.
I know. I just kind of wanted to hear it from you, what it was like for you, because I mean, obviously it's stressful being sent to war. It's really stressful being the woman of a man who is sent to war.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you for sharing that.
Okay.
All right. So, I'm gonna venture to guess that Roxanne was not privy to some of the shenanigans that you were engaged in over in Vietnam.
Well, the thing about is a lot of the things that, not a lot, but like you said, some shit I never talked about. It wasn't, that it's just, there's no sense in putting a burden on her.
Completely understand.
And that, so I just didn't talk about it, And the thing is, and what I really thought about is, I know she was worried as hell. I could crash and get shot and that. And I says, is it really right for me to not think about this? And she does.
Absolutely.
And so when I did write to her, I didn't mention it.
You wrote to her to let her know that you were okay.
Yeah, I wrote and let her know okay. And guess what we did? We flew up to the lot and got all kinds of fruit and that. And then I said, when I was out in the train, we went down the road a little bit and had beer and lobster tail. I didn't want to tell her I went out and picked up 2 guys with their head blowing off or this.
No.
She doesn't need that.
No.
So that's the way I did it. And she's asked me since I've been home what happened.
Mm-hmm.
I said, nothing much.
You must have seen, especially as a medevac pilot, you saw a lot of hurt and you saw a lot of trauma.
The best thing I did when I was a medevac pilot, I carried a cooler in my ship, and in that cooler was ice cold beer and a bottle of booze.
That's good thinking right there.
And a guy would get on if he had a shoulder wound or leg wound or something like that, he'd get a beer. If a guy had a belly wound, he didn't get nothing. And I told him why. I can't give you anything. You got a belly wound. No liquid.
Yeah.
Well, can you brush my lips with you got whiskey? And I said, yeah, I can brush your lips and your tongue, but you're not taking any swallow.
Gotcha.
Well, my call sign was Dustoff 11. And every time I went out to a site to fly from, the call come off, we want Dustoff 11.
Because he's bringing beer.
Well, they never said that because I could get my ass chewed out. But they said that's the guy we want.
Nice.
So I knew why they wanted it. And hey, it's nice it takes his mind off that leg wound, arm wound, maybe his arm half blowing off to have a beer and suck on it.
Absolutely. That's very thoughtful of you.
And that's what I enjoy doing. And it's just like when after the first medevac, second, third medevac, I says, this is my calling. And I don't want a gunship.
So you got over the loss of the gunship pretty quickly, huh?
Oh, quickly because of pulling the guy out.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, you look back and look at him, and his eye, he's got tears in his eyes. He's coming out.
Mm-hmm. And
I told him, don't cry, son. We'll get you. You'll live. And you saw my hat I wore at Costco.
I did, yeah. It said Dustoff on it.
Dustoff, Vietnam Dustoff, so others may live. And that's the motto I used. And I enjoyed it. People said, how could you enjoy it? Because I saved a life. And the guy was happy.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah.
That's an amazing story. So all told, how much time did you spend in country as a medevac pilot? I can see how many hours you flew and how many guys you pulled out. Full year.
You're a full year in there. And the thing is, if you go out and to a 2.5 week place to cover the 101st or somebody like that, and you end up getting some bullet holes in your aircraft, they have to bring another one out to you and that. Then when you go back, the CO would say, take a week off.
Mm.
You don't have to go back. You've been good out there in that. The only thing that hurt was that I really felt sorry is the one time I was going up to play coup to relieve a crew.
Mm-hmm.
And we was going up, and it was night. And so I heard they were out on a medevac. I called him up, and I says, where are you guys going? He says, just up to the mountains here. We got a medevac. And I said, what's wrong with the patient? Well, he's got a high fever. I says, tell him to put him outside in the cool air in the mountains and go get him in the morning. He's not going to die tonight with a high fever. So they said, no, we'll do it. I said, okay. When they went up there, a light was flashing, and they said, we got you. And they started toward the light, and the guy on the light said, no, it's not here. It's just to our right up there.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, okay. They turned right into the mountain and killed them all.
Ooh.
I chewed that guy out on that light. I told him, if I was down there, you'd be dead. You shouldn't have turned that damn light on. But I didn't get up there then. So
That's tough.
that was two of my best buddies.
Yeah.
And that's when it hurts.
Yeah. So once you came home, I mean, it sounds like, I mean, you had a really good perspective on it. You talk about, the fact that you did it because of the people that you were able to help.
Yeah.
But you saw a lot of bad things too. You saw a lot of painful things. You lost some friends.
Yes.
How much of that did you take with you? Like, how did you? Because I mean, PTSD is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
It affects many different people in many different ways. How did you fare with that?
You want to know the truth?
I do.
It did not bother me. My time with SF taught me.
Mm-hmm.
You don't let that, you don't think about it. You did. You did the people that did. Sorry.
Right.
I came out of Nam. I enjoyed the country.
Mm-hmm.
It was a beautiful country.
Mm-hmm.
And I just blocked out. And I saw the guys shot to hell.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt sorry for them.
Sure.
But what really capped it off is I got him back, and I had some free time. I went and seen him.
Mm-hmm.
And they were laying in the hospital bed,
Mm-hmm.
and they were alive.
Yeah.
And I says, thank God I did my job.
Yeah. And I bet they're saying that too.
PTSD, the people I saw with PSD, and it pissed me off, excuse my French, was guys that are back in Saigon on typewriters and that. Would the typewriter attack them? And they got home and claimed PTSD. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
they never saw a bullet shot at them.
Mm-hmm.
And that. And I was called to testify for an individual, PTSD, with the city. I can't say what part of the city.
That's okay.
And I was his CO, and they said, well, the people on the board said, can we see his records? And I said, no, those are medical records. That's none of your business what's in them.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to know something, ask me. I'll look. And if it's not in there, I ain't telling you. She says, well, he said he really, really got scared in firefights and that. So I opened up his record, and I said, sorry, he's lying. She says, how do you know? He was the clerk typist in Saigon. Would the typewriter shoot at him?
And you were called to testify as a witness, or under what capacity were you?
On what capacity if I thought he had PTSD?
Yeah, but why were they asking you? What was your?
I was the CO.
Oh, okay, I got
I
you.
was this commanding officer.
I got you.
And he put me down as a witness for him.
I see.
And I told him, I'm telling the truth. He says, that's all right. He got it.
Hmm.
He got the money or the payment, and that he retired, and it was from the opposite of what you do.
Mm-hmm.
You know what that would be. I ain't going to say it because somebody will say, oh yeah, I know it.
That's okay. That's all right.
No, but I never did really believe in PTSD. I would in the guys that were in my aircraft.
Mm-hmm.
Shot all the hell.
Absolutely.
But some guys sitting in Saigon, come on.
Yeah. So But what about later? Because like in your line of work, in my line of work, a lot of the things that we experienced early on that you, like you said, you can't deal. You have to do your job. You don't deal with it then, but it does have a way of sneaking up on you later.
I mean, like flying and that.
Yeah, so like years later, when you had time to decompress from everything that happened over in Vietnam, did you ever have any? Did you ever have any kind of PTSD symptoms after that?
No,
nothing.
The only thing I got was, and I don't blame the Army. I don't blame our government, but Agent Orange.
Right.
I got it. I got ischemic heart disease, cancer, and thyroid damn near shot.
Well, and they traced all that back to Agent Orange.
All back to Agent Orange. How I got it when I flew into the jungle where they just sprayed it, I got it. But the thing is, what the government signed it away that we couldn't go after the company.
Right, I heard about that.
That made it. Okay. That's the cost of doing war. Don't hold it against the government. It helped us sometimes, but in the long run, it was the wrong thing.
Right. I understand. So after you came home, what kind of reception did you get when you came home? Now, you came back to Spokane. You didn't come back to Berkeley.
No, I came back to L.A.
Oh, did you?
I flew in there.
What was that like when you came home?
I got spit on.
Did you?
I was called a baby killer.
Yeah.
In this. And 3 guys come up at me, and I put my stuff down. I was going to start a fight. Didn't have to. 2 Hell's Angel guys grabbed him. They beat to hell. But, I mean, a lot of GIs said, well, I didn't get thanked in this.
Right.
I says, well, is the thank you going to change anything? It's not.
Right.
And if the Vietnamese thanked you, even though we didn't win it wasn't their fault, then I'd say, okay, thank you, you're welcome. But now, people, you walk around, you got your veteran hat on or whatever.
Right.
They come up and say, thanks for your service. Okay, I thank them. But I also want to say, it's a little late, but I'm not holding a grudge.
Right.
That's me.
No, I understand. I'll share something with you real quick. When I came home from Desert Storm, we flew into an Air Force base. It was like 2:00 in the morning, and an Air Force chaplain gets on the bus. As we got off the C5, got on the bus, we're rolling out, and this Air Force chaplain gets on the bus, and he says, when you guys get there, you can expect a hero's welcome. And I was like, I didn't know what that meant. I was like, oh, maybe they have pizza and beer. So we roll up to this hangar, and we go in there, and the doors open, and there's a giant flag, and they start playing "Proud to Be an American," and the place is packed at 2:00 in the morning. And we're walking down this red carpet, and all these people are clapping and waving and shaking hands and all that. And I was like, God dang, this is quite a reception. And we get to the end of the line, and there's a guy standing there with a motorcycle vest on. I don't remember what it said, but I mean, there was patches on it that clearly identified him as a Vietnam vet, and he had one leg. And he was standing there, and I talked to him. I talked to him briefly, and he said, "This is quite the reception. I know this is quite different than what you got, and I appreciate you being here." And he says, "I just want to make sure that you guys don't get what we got." And I was moved by that, and I appreciated that guy being there more than anything else, because the pessimist in me says that, or the skeptic in me says that I appreciate those people being there, but at the same time, I almost felt like it was a makeup for what happened when the guys came home from Vietnam, because we realized as a nation we made a mistake.
Well, as a nation, yeah, I can buy that. But the thing I can't buy is Jane Fonda. I'd have shot her.
You wouldn't be the first guy to say that.
No. But the thing is, when we were first there, when I was a Green Beret, we came home. people there congratulate, thank you, and all this.
Mm-hmm.
What really killed it for us was the newspaper.
Right.
The guy'd go over there, and I saw him kill 2 kids. But he didn't bother telling them 2 kids were strapped with dynamite with the bomb and blow them out.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't tell that story, that part of the story. He just shot 2 kids. Well, that's what Charlie did. When Charlie attacked our camp at Special Forces, they took the village and pushed them forward into our fire.
Mm-hmm.
We had to fire them. We didn't, they'd overrun us. So we had to fire.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of war. You're going to have, what do they call it?
Casualties of war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, but that, as far as if I came back, if we go back to that time and I came back and the guy walked up and called me a baby killer, I'd beat the hell out of him.
Yeah. Well,
that's the way I am.
So you didn't expect a lot of thanks, but you didn't expect to be called a bunch of names either.
No. You don't, if you don't like what I did, keep your mouth shut. Seal it, or I'll seal it. So that's my feeling. And I tell you what, from one my people couldn't, nowadays they say you went through all that as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
little child, and look what you turned out to be. I says, hey, you got to sit and think what you want to do and how you want to get to there.
Yeah. So when you came home, it sounded like you did. You assimilated back into life pretty well.
Yeah.
You had your wife waiting for you.
Mm-hmm.
Brand new daughter.
Yep.
How many daughters do you have?
3.
3. And how many of them were born? Just the one was born while you were gone. Is that right?
Yeah.
So when you came home, you said you were in sales?
Yeah.
What'd you sell? What'd you do?
I was a food salesman.
Okay.
And I flew for the National Guard, but it got to the point where I didn't want to fly anymore.
Yeah, you did your time. I can understand that.
Yeah, I can do, and that. And so the only thing I did do, I got some guys together and we taught kids how to handle guns.
Mm-hmm.
They want to go hunting. So we got the game wardens that to prove our classes and that. And once we took them through the handling of a weapon and that, then we took them out and at a rifle range, let them fire. Then the next weekend, we took them on a camping trip.
Mm-hmm.
Break them down into groups. Okay, here's your map. We want you to reach that point.
So you made good use of your time. You did some positive things with the community, with the kids.
Yeah. You
had a job. You kept flying for the National Guard until you got tired of it. Sounds like you did pretty well.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. So let's see. There was the greatest generation, our generation that went to it was in World War II,
mm-hmm.
And then following the greatest generation is your generation, the silent generation, followed by my generation. No, that's not right. The baby boomers came after you.
Yeah.
Followed by my generation, which is Generation X, which I'm extremely proud of. What are your thoughts on how did you feel about the generations that followed you? Like their ideals, the way they thought, the way they operated?
Want to know the truth?
Yeah, I want to know the truth.
Okay. They were babied. Mommy and Daddy had to protect them.
Starting when?
With, I'm going to say, the baby boomers.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Okay.
How were the baby boomers baby?
I got a sister-in-law that was a baby boomer.
Mm-hmm.
And she was jealous of Roxanne.
Mm-hmm.
She was jealous of her other older sister.
Mm-hmm.
And she was jealous of the younger sister.
Okay.
Well, Dad always bought stuff for the younger one.
Mm-hmm.
And look at Roxanne.
Mm-hmm.
She's married to him, and they've been married so long and they got money.
So do you think she's a representative of the whole generation, or do you think that's just her?
That's just her. That's in the baby boomer area.
Okay.
And you got to look at, and I looked at the baby boomers in school.
Mm-hmm.
And I think toward the end of the baby boomers,
mm-hmm.
they thought they could do anything they want and get away with it.
Is that right?
That's what I thought.
Okay, so
And that's what I could see. And then the next group,
watch now.
well, the next group you got to look at is they kind of went against the baby boomer.
Mm-hmm.
And they were saying, no, you don't do it that way. You do it this way. You do it that. They were taking it higher. But then after you guys, what do you got?
You got the millennials, Generation Y.
Yeah. Why can't I go in the women's bathroom?
Oh, okay, that came a little bit later, but
yeah, it came a little later, but it was a startup.
Yeah.
They learned, each group learned somewhat from the group back of it.
So what? Okay, so I see. Okay. Your thoughts on the baby boomers. So what are your thoughts on my people, my Generation X?
Generation X, you had a lot of them go into the service.
Yeah.
And I don't think in your group the timeout card came.
Correct. The ass move, that was full on ass beating.
Right. And in your group, when they wanted to service, they didn't cry, oh, he called me a name.
No, we didn't have any timeout cards.
Then, and we had guys, Randy Rear Ranks. You can't call me. The hell I can't. Just shut up and line up. But your group was great in the service. I mean, you could see it.
I would agree with that.
And then you went after that group, and that was the start of not really right then and there, but the timeout card.
Mm-hmm.
You can't yell at them anymore. You can't do this. You can't do that. If they would have saw me as the TAC officer when I was in the Army,
that'd have been your ass.
It would have been I had one guy report in with a beard and everything because he went out of Nam to the Bahamas and had a vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the Sergeant E5, and he come with the beard and mustache and that. And I ran him over to me. They ran him over to me. And I says, oh, you got a beard. The Army don't have beards, do they? He said, no, but I didn't have time because I came from the Bahamas on my vacation. Oh, there's no bathrooms where you could go shaving? No, I just didn't feel like it then. I said, oh, you got a razor now? He says, yeah, get it. You got it. Shave. Well, I need some soap and water. No, you don't. You shave that damn beard off now. He lasted a week and a half.
Mm-hmm.
He quit.
So this is interesting. I didn't have any of this planned. So this is all like very.
Yeah, that's fine.
Too. So the generation that went to war in Afghanistan, there were some amazing people there too. I mean, it's I certainly don't want to speak ill of any particular group because it's not, you can't just tag the whole group. I mean, there was amazing people that served in the armed forces all through the war in Afghanistan. It's some of the stories that I heard are just flat out amazing, and I have mad respect for those guys. And coming back from Desert Storm, and I told you about the greeting that we got and the reception that we got. We got all kinds of benefits and like just people falling all over backwards to say thank you and be nice to us and all that. I don't really even talk about it that much because the guys that fought in Afghanistan, I mean, that was a whole different war. And it was one that it had no end for years. And there's not enough good things that I can say about those guys that came home and like the things that they had to deal with over there and the things that they had to deal with assimilating back into civilian life when they came home. But it is for sure there's the way that generations think. It's very intriguing to me, like what they feel is important and how they perceive the generations that preceded them. And it's interesting to me to get your perspective on that.
Well, the thing is, I can only judge by what my generation and people I was with did and what they felt.
Mm-hmm.
And at first, great.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden it went downhill.
Or did it go downhill or was it just different?
It went downhill because when I was flying, and we was Army Lane Field north of Quinyon. We had guys on guard duty puffing away on marijuana and everything. And I was officer of the day, and I had to go down in there. You had to watch how you talk.
Yeah.
They'd have shot you in a minute. And they got the drugs from the locals. But before that, you couldn't find marijuana in Vietnam.
Well, I know they had quite a presence there at one point.
Yeah, it was toward the end.
Yeah, and you were there at the beginning.
But see, that's the thing. And then you see that over there, and then you come home, and the newspapers screwed you all over. And that. So you can't, I don't blame the guys I served with in that era. But as I look up to the other ones, then I say, wait a minute. The baby boomers are a bunch of ball babies. That's me saying it. The X, they got a set of Gennards, and they said, bullshit, this is what we're going to do. Because you guys had the same thing that we had. Nobody's going to go kick the little guy's ass. We're tired of that. But then after you, it went back the other way. To me, it did. And now you see, I got nothing against the kid, but the seniors and juniors in high school have got to sit down and think and look to the future. What am I going to do? What do I want to do? And how can I better my life? And to me, they should really think, go into the service. Go in for 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah.
You really don't have your head screwed on yet.
But you're not expected to. I mean,
no, you're not expected to, but you go in there and you can learn a hell of a lot.
Absolutely. And we kind of touched on it earlier that until you learn to be a good follower, you're going to be pretty hard pressed to be a good leader.
Right. But once you go in there, within 2 years, you can be a leader.
That's right.
If you buckle down and do it.
Yeah. I mean, you go into whether it's the Army or the Marine Corps. I mean, you're there for a year, and next thing you know, you could be a squad leader. You could be, you got guys whose lives are dependent on your decisions.
Yeah. And that's it.
Well, in your case, I mean, you're an aircraft commander at the age of 23.
Right. But I won't ask anybody to do something I won't do first.
Right. And that's, it's interesting that you said that, because one of my very first lessons in leadership was just something that I observed in my first year in the Marine Corps. And it was outside of boot camp and training and all that. I was in my squadron, and it was time. We were getting ready to go home. It was time to clean up. And I was a private first class, and the corporal grabs a broom and he heads out and he starts sweeping. And I was like, oh, hey, Corporal Clayton, you don't have to do that. I grabbed another broom, and he goes, I'm not going to ask somebody to do something that I wouldn't do myself. I mean, it was a very small thing, sweeping up outside.
Yeah,
but it made a very big impression on me, and it stuck with me.
And the thing is, if they see you doing it, and then that corporal later on he gets with his buddies, says, something? I didn't ask him, but I started sweeping up. And his private came up and says, hey, that's not your job. That's my job. And then he grabbed a broom and started sweeping too. So kind of impressed. And I would say for that guy to go someplace else, and if it comes to the point where you have to sweep up, you got 3 guys and say, hey guys, come on, let's sweep this place down.
Yeah.
I'm going to be right with you. Yeah. It spreads.
Yeah. And well, in the case of that guy, I just thought that was leadership by example.
It is.
Yeah.
He led by example, and you picked up on it.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. We're kind of at the end of our time here.
Yeah.
We've had some fairly philosophical discussion about our generations and everything. Yeah. So I would like to ask you, aside from, join the service and, and serve the country and all that, what is one piece of advice that you would give to today's youth?
Today's youth would be sit down and look at what you've done, right or wrong, what you've done. Then look forward and say, okay, how can I better my life and better myself? And is it going to school, college? Is it going to find a job? And don't expect a job when you go to put you at the top of the scale.
Right.
You work your butt off up there. But my advice is, if you want an education, go in the service. You'll get a hell of an education. You'll learn a skill. But I can tell you right now, I know of 5 guys that were in the Air Force. They were stationed at Fairchild for 12 years. And when they left Fairchild to go to another base, all 3 of them had master's degrees that Uncle Sam paid for out at Fairchild. The colleges, they had teachers, professors come in and teach. So there's something you can do.
So you're saying there's some opportunity there.
A big opportunity. But don't let somebody tell you, oh, the service is a bunch of bull. No, it isn't.
No.
And if you want to know, come and see me anytime and I'll tell you. I'm not going to tell you which one to join. It's up to you. What do you want to do? What do you want to be? And how you want to do it.
Absolutely.
And that. And then turn around and look at your parents and say, Mom and Dad, I know I screwed up, but by God, you're going to be proud of me later. That's what I tell them.
Yeah. Well, Bill, I appreciate the time that you spent with me today.
Hey, I enjoyed it.
It's been a great talk. And I'll say thank you for your service. I appreciate your perspective, and I appreciate your candor.
And I thank you for your service.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. It's been a great talk.
Yeah, it has, really. I hope we did some good.
I think we did. Thanks, Bill.
Mm-hmm.